Gillmor. This is the Gillmor gang. We got the usual suspects, and they are starting to my right. Keith Tier, welcome, Keith.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And from San Jose, Kevin Moss.
Hello again. Good morning.
And
have some coffee.
In the middle, Robert Scoble.
I need coffee.
And to my left.
I'm still having the checkerboard problem, but I guess we'll just live with it.
I know. We're going to have to live with it.
All right.
And John Toshek. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be here.
Okay.
Glowing, John.
So,
Yeah, dude looked at it.
Robert Scoble, what's going on?
I don't know. There's a little company called Twitter filed for their IPO yesterday, so everybody's been looking over their financials and seeing how much money they lost.
Kind of confirms what we said last week, that they're not ready.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be doing it.
Why is that?
Yeah, why is that?
It's because if you look at the actual numbers, they acknowledge that they've got a huge move from desktop to mobile, and that for everyone who moves over, they lose additional revenue per user, and their losses are growing rapidly, even though their revenues are growing massively. So they're not in shape to really predict anything. They're in a transitional phase. They should stay private and figure it out and then go public. I mean, they're awesome. They're going to be huge. It's just bad timing.
So does this mean an opportunity for investors to watch the stock fall like it has with most IPOs lately, including Rackspace? You know, when Rackspace went public 5 years ago, the price went down, and then it started going up, and it's gone up 10x since then.
Well, it depends where they price it. That could happen, depending on where they price it. If they're smart, they'll price it low, and it'll just go up. But that won't be the problem. The problem will be the quarterly results for the next several quarters. Dick probably doesn't know what they're going to say right now.
I don't know. I think they're releasing only a small number of shares. Now, I'm not a financial analyst, as I always say, and I mean, they're restricting the number of shares open in order to fuel this transition. I think it's a good time for them to go public. They got to do it before the government completely shuts down forever.
I think you're right in the market sense. The market couldn't be better. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are probably thinking about going public now just due to the market, like, you know, GoDaddy, for example, which got bought by a private equity a couple of years ago. There's probably 10, 20 companies that could be thinking of going public, and in that meta sense, you're right. But I don't know about you guys, I've actually taken a company public, nearly 2. And if you don't know your results, the market will hammer you if you don't meet numbers that you predict. They'll just hammer you.
So they did come up short in the numbers, right? There's an expectation of greater than whatever they announced, 250 million or so for the 6 months. But that's still, you know, 500 million in revenue. That's pretty significant for the little company that is Twitter. I think it's a good time. You know, if they're going at this fast, and everyone is still using them, and the momentum is growing, number of users are growing, as those stats have indicated. I mean, what's wrong with it going public now?
No, they only had 7% growth in the most recent quarter, which is not stellar, and
7% user growth, or
yeah, user growth. Plus, it isn't actually about absolute amount of revenues. It's about predictable growth. It doesn't matter how big your revenues are. If you can't predict the growth, the market will try
true.
So it's a great company. I'm not saying anything bad about the company. Also, I'm not second guessing Dick. He may have to go public for all kinds of reasons we don't know. But it's going to be scary. If I was him, I wouldn't be feeling comfortable.
So why'd they do it then?
It's hard to tell what the variables are. I mean, it could be shareholders want this as the next step. It could be that they tried to raise money at various valuations and failed, so going public's a better way to raise it because their cash position has been declining quite a lot. So they definitely want to put more cash into the company. there could be any number of reasons why it's the right thing to do internally, and no one else can really second guess that. And he's a good guy, so I'm sure there's a good reason. It's just so my point is only he needs to know that the first, I don't know, 4 to 6 quarters are kind of in the bag.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The market likes stability and growth, and predictability and growth. And if it's not predictable, then, which means high levels of retainer subscribers to whatever services they might provide, high levels of traffic, and their ads working. They need to improve that.
I don't know if you read the bit about the ads, but that's the bit I was fascinated by. They have a different set of language to describe their advertising. It's called ads per timeline view, and I think timeline view is roughly the equivalent of a page view. I don't know that for sure because they don't really define it very well, but I think that's what it is. And they made the point that on the desktop they get something like, I think it was like $1.27 per timeline view on the desktop, but on mobile, because of the screen real estate, the ads are not being clicked on. So the dollars per timeline view is like, it was under 50 cents. I can't quite remember the number, but there was a dramatic gap between desktop revenues per user per timeline view. And their whole advertising take is putting ads into the stream. And, one of the things I did early on at Just Me is patented this idea of ads through direct messaging. Not in the stream, but actually more like Facebook fanning of a brand and allowing a brand to have a dialogue with a user through direct messaging, opted in by the user. And that's what Line is doing in Japan, and it's minting money. So I think they haven't yet got...
talk about that phenomenon there. Why is Line minting money?
So what they've done is they've allowed brands to become users on the system, and they've allowed users to make friends with brands, roughly equivalent to Facebook being a fan of a brand. And the incentive to become a friend of a brand is that they'll give you coupons and promotions or offers or early insights into new products and all kinds of stuff like that. So lots of people are becoming friends of brands and getting into dialogues, and Line charges every time someone becomes a friend of a brand and then for every dialogue. So it's actually a very, very scalable set of interactions.
Kevin, you were going to say something?
So, I mean, I think you're missing the other part, which is you friend a brand or follow a brand in order to have support conversations with them, to complain about things, and to use that stuff. And that's a valuable part of how brands and companies use Twitter. Right. Also, Twitter does, it's not just the tweets. They also charge for suggested follows and things like that. They have ways of making revenue from the brands who want people to follow them. They're in danger of tainting their suggestion process if they put too many of those in. But that's the sponsored tags and the sponsored suggestions are also a chunk of that.
So going back to a point we made many months ago about platform versus destination, or not versus, but there's two kind of things that Twitter represents. One is a platform, the other is it's a destination and a kind of curation platform with all kinds of content. That platform play, if you think of Google AdSense as the ad platform for the web, Twitter probably has the opportunity to be the ad platform for mobile.
Yeah,
that's more than anyone, actually.
Because you were saying they've got a desktop to mobile transition, but that's, I think that's true. They started on mobile. They've understood that fairly well from the beginning, even when they were still propagating over text messages. And now they've got a very good position on mobile, both being baked into iOS and being a highly used client on Android, which means that they've got a fairly strong position there. And I think they even said like 65% of their ad revenue is from mobile already. So it's not, they may be getting less page views, or less revenue per page view, but they've got that many more page views on mobile that they're catching up. I suspect. I've compared that direct with Facebook, but I think they're in a better position than Facebook with that.
So let me read you a quote from the S1 that completely contradicts that. It says, trends on mobile applications. primarily as a result of promoted accounts and promoted trends receiving less prominence on mobile applications. We've generated higher advertising revenue per timeline view on our desktop applications than on our mobile. Although advertising revenue per timeline view on our desktop is higher than advertising revenue per timeline view on mobile, the substantial majority of our timeline views and advertising revenue is generated from mobile. Accordingly, to the extent that user engagement on mobile continues to increase faster than user engagement on desktop applications, advertising revenue per timeline view may be adversely impacted even if total advertising revenue continues to increase. That's kind of a big deal.
That's a different clause, okay. Because the piece I was reading where they said 65% of revenue is from mobile and they expect that proportion to grow.
The proportion will grow, but that doesn't mean the pie is getting bigger.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I just think
it probably will. It probably will, by the way, but they can't predict it.
They're just cashing in, getting into the marketplace, setting up the ability to be able to make acquisitions and investments. I don't see this as being.
But the other thing there is that as the mobile screens get converge more with desktop screens, as they get bigger and higher res, then that distinction will fade away a bit.
There's a big point here, Kevin, for Google and Facebook, for all of us, for the whole industry actually, at least consumer facing. What they're really saying is the total number of dollars you can extract from the world's population on the desktop is bigger by far than if the total world's population was on mobile. The same group of people would represent way less dollars in terms of revenue from ads. That's what they're saying. And that obviously is true, and intuitively it makes sense because mobile is not a great place to advertise. So it begs the question, what is the business model for a world that is largely mobile in the next 2 to 5 years when the desktop use per hours spent declines to a small enough number that even Google is threatened by it?
No, I agree that there is a structural problem with advertising, particularly the kinds of advertising that are being tuned for page views and for desktops. I think you're spot on there. I'm suspicious. Well, I just compared the Twitter page on my laptop and the Twitter page on my tablet, and I get 7 tweets displayed on the tablet and 4 on the desktop. So maybe my desktop screen is too small, but I'm not sure this distinction is of we can't see as much on the mobile one is as strong. It may be because there's more in the sidebar and they're promoting things there on the desktop. Maybe that's where their revenue is going from.
I bet you if you break down their traffic between smartphone and tablet, it's in the 80% smartphone and not tablet.
Right, but I'm I continue to argue that's an artificial distinction as those two categories blur.
Well, they may have to reclassify that whole way of looking at that as page views or clicks per timeline, and just look at just clicks in general, because people are looking at their phones many times over the course of the day, and they may just be getting they may be going into that advertiser or that identify that in that time and very quick time frames. So maybe advertising is going to change too. But I think that's, I don't know, looking at the number of ads that are in a stream is kind of an artificial, construct.
Well, but they're not charging per ad. They're charging per action. So part of the issue is that they get fewer actions on the mobile.
That's exactly right.
I think that's all shifting as people use mobile more.
Well, and it's shifting as Twitter ads are becoming more known. A friend of mine up in Seattle is using Twitter for advertising. She's saying she's getting a lot of more response than she's getting on other systems. So, if that's true and it continues, then the numbers will show up. And maybe they're hoping that the numbers do show up when they go public. But it does seem like they went out a couple quarters too early. Even if the numbers are going to be there.
Kevin hit the nail on the head. It's about engagements, not about views. So that's the language they use in it. And I've bought Twitter ads, and what you're buying is likes, follows, favorites, follows. It's all the actions you can take on an ad. And
How much is it?
More money for basically they measure, they tell you how well your ad performed based on, they call it engagements per thousand.
Yeah.
And how much is that?
And
do they still call it
depends.
resonance?
It's a bidded market, so it varies. But I'm finding that if you wanted to spend money for an engagement on Twitter, in my world, which is mobile social, you're paying a roughly $2 per engagement, which doesn't equate to an install, by the way. Whereas on Facebook, you're paying about $2 per install. So their prices are too high, and in the S1 it reveals that the prices have collapsed in the last quarter as competition has risen. So,
do you pay for installs that come through the cards mechanism, or is that?
You can, but it's really klutzy. It doesn't really get in front of people enough. What you really have to do is do promoted tweets with a direct link to an install from the App Store.
Gotcha.
And it's too expensive, and even though prices have collapsed for them, the first month I spent money, they were like 5 times more expensive than Facebook. Now they're about 3 times more expensive than Facebook. So they're probably going to have to come down by even another 66% on price, whilst volumes are not growing. And by the way, this isn't me kind of ringing the alarm bells. I think it's an awesome company with only good things ahead. It's all about managing expectations and being able to be a successful public company. And I absolutely believe that Twitter could be the Google of mobile in terms of being the ad platform, and there's all kinds of things they can do. Because they've got direct messaging, they can extend from public stream to private conversations, which I think where there's a lot of money.
I don't know if you saw that post from on Google Mobile, advertising on display versus mobile, where I don't know, I'll have to find it, but it said basically the prediction was that by 2015 or something like that, that mobile would make up a significant chunk of Google's revenue on advertising. That's shifting, although it's heavily focused on desktop now. It's shifting rapidly into mobile. I'll find it and then I'll be able to talk more about it. But I think the same is true of Twitter. But I think what you said also is that this high valuation and the bidding process for advertising, from your perspective on mobile and social, is well, I think that's a cautious sign there. If you're less willing to spend on it, unless there's some kind of more concrete action, that's probably true of every company that's out there, right?
I know for me, I haven't got a big budget, so I've got to be very careful what I spend. So I'll factor that in. But my first instinct now is to go and do a Just Me post on the Facebook page for Just Me and on my personal Facebook, and then pay to promote that. I can get to 1 million people for about $1,000 on Facebook. And a large number of those, you're getting roughly 2,000 likes on a post from 1 million views. And for $1,000, I'm really only interested in awareness and making sure people know that Just Me.
You're not interested in conversion or anything yet, right?
Well, I like it, but it isn't my primary. It isn't my primary goal. My primary goal can't be conversion because I actually don't have enough money for that to be the goal. If I wanted to convert, let's say, 500,000 people to install Just Me, I would have to have a budget of about 1.5 million just for that.
And what's the comparison with Twitter?
Twitter, it'd have to be about 3 million to 4 million for the same thing.
That's interesting.
And by the way, Google would have to be about 10 million.
Okay, so have we exhausted the Twitter conversation yet?
The team is gone.
Scoble, what do you think?
I think it's one of the world's most important brands, and a lot of people are on it. I don't have much to say. I'm not.
That would be
I'm not
my
going to
point.
invest in the company. And I think Keith nailed that it's going to be a rocky ride coming out of the IPO. I don't. When Facebook came out, I really had a clear idea that they were going to be good eventually. And yeah, even the Facebook one was a pretty rocky ride for the first 6 months, but now it's it's up above where the IPO came out, and it's doing pretty well, extraordinarily well, really, if you look at the numbers.
Robert, were you surprised that Dick only has 1.6% of the company?
No, that's sort of what a CEO would get after the main action has happened. I mean, how much of TechCrunch did Heather Hardy get?
I couldn't possibly tell you, but other than it was a lot more than that.
Okay.
And I've been hired as a CEO before by a company, and my starting number was 8%. 8 to 10 is normal, but then obviously there's dilution when you raise money. But I would have thought he'd be at 5 at least.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, Evan is one of the world's best capitalists we've ever seen, and you see how he treated his early staff, some of whom helped come up with the Twitter idea, got zero.
Yeah.
And I know 2 people who got nothing, and
Evan Biz doesn't appear on the list. He must have sold out earlier.
Yeah, I don't know what he has or if he sold out. I don't know. It's just an extraordinary company, and it's Evan is one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever seen. I mean, remember he kicked Jack out of the company for a while,
Yeah.
because he knew this was going to be. He knew this was going to be a big deal, and so did some of us. Most of my friends said it was the lamest thing they ever seen, and they didn't think it was going to be important. But I knew it was going to be important quickly.
But then they brought Jack back in and made him pledge his voting shares to Ev.
Yeah, which you can tell Ev is a real hard-ass negotiator.
So I'll say it here loud and clear. I think Ev's a dick. I mean, he's going to make money, but I don't know if anyone's going to like the guy. I mean, what a schmuck.
Twitter is the only company that stabbed me in the back, and I've felt this kind of love-hate relationship with Twitter for a long time. It's not an ultra nice company, and I think it comes from this. Well,
I think
how you treat the people around you it signals a lot of stuff to the marketplace. And
well, I think it's easy to to find fault with people's strategies, but there's no I never thought that Blogger was all that interesting as a product or as a platform or any of that. But Ev seems to have the talent for finding the middle of the road. Something that's good enough and that gets out there and gets some momentum.
Well, he gave a good talk at XOXO about his philosophy, and his philosophy is basically increasing convenience of things people already want to do and reducing cognitive load and simplifying. And that's, if you look at the Twitter and Medium, that thread runs through it.
I get that, and yeah, there were other people who were trying to do the same thing. I mean, I was a competitor of Evan's in the early days. I worked for Dave Weiner, and he had a competitive system to Blogger.
Yeah, but radio was always really, really awkward to use because you had to run a server on your own machine and fiddle about a lot. Whereas Blogger was like, here's a box, type in it. It's on the web, done. Next.
Mm-hmm.
And Twitter took that a step further. And
but was Evan
a really tiny box?
Was Evan the guy who did Twitter? I don't. From everybody who talks to me about how Twitter came about,
it wasn't him. You're right.
It wasn't him. It was Noah, and it was Dom, and it was Jack.
No, Jack. Yeah.
And two of the three didn't get anything out of Twitter.
Having said that, he gets credit for recognizing it and going with it and closing down.
Absolutely. I mean, he is. If I want to be an entrepreneur, I think about.
He made
Evan
a bet
a lot. Right.
He made a bet. He took.
He took Odeo private and to concentrate on Twitter.
I mean,
he took it back from the investors.
That was the single most
the money on it,
significant business move that company's done. Yeah. I mean, most of what Twitter is a result of users, not as a result of any of the executives.
Yeah. And that's I mean, that's the sort of structural problem they've got going forwards, is that if their ad revenue isn't growing as fast as they're hiring people to sell it, which they have exploded in the number of people they've got on the ad side there now. They've got a huge office with like 2,000 people now. Is it more?
2,000. Yeah.
Yeah, which a big chunk of those are supposed to be selling ads, and if they're not, if their ads aren't growing as fast as the number of people they got trying to sell them are, then something's wrong there. And I suspect, my sense from some of the growth there is they've brought a lot of people in who don't really understand Twitter and are trying to treat it like a traditional web ad business, and that may be part of their problem.
Well, that always happens. I don't necessarily fault them for that, but if you remember what Facebook did, they brought in, I don't know how many of you know Chamath. They brought in Chamath at the point where they needed to think product and revenue, and a bunch of other people as well. Am I right? Brad Garlinghouse was there for a while, I think. I can't remember all the people, but they brought good people in, basically. And Zuckerberg understood that down on the ground you're just going to have salespeople, but in the middle you need strategic revenue people. And it feels as if Dick has a very good head on his shoulders, and I'm pretty sure he's doing most of the right things. But they don't seem to have brought in the heavy hitter middle management team, or if they have, I'm not aware of who they are. There's no names that I could point to.
Well, I think that's why this is so interesting that they're going public now. I disagree with all of these advertising scenarios, because I think they're completely. I mean, basically the real time infrastructure is controlled by Twitter and Facebook in that order. Not Facebook has an enormous number of users and an enormous and growing amount of revenue, but what it doesn't control is when things happen. They don't happen on Facebook. They happen on Twitter, and that means that much like the way that the cable networks rise and fall based on the events of the day. When you get a huge firestorm around something that's happening, in politics or in some sort of disaster or whatever, then Twitter has an enormous revenue opportunity, which they will, as they continue to survive and grow, they're going to continue to become more and more powerful, and the revenue is going to continue to grow, I think, eventually exponentially. So I think they're in an enormously powerful position, which they've gotten to mostly because Ev and Jack have refused to sell. And I think that they're now in a position to be able to start building a revenue engine. Nothing has happened until then.
I don't disagree with that, Steve. I mean, just in case Ev or Jack or Dick watch the show, and I know that they do on occasion, I'm not saying that they're doing anything wrong, and I definitely want to repeat that we shouldn't be second-guessing good entrepreneurs because they know all the variables and we don't. And so I could be completely wrong in what I'm saying. I'm just telling my gut instinct based on what I've read, and that's going to be very shallow. I do agree that they got a huge opportunity, and I think where Ev is not a dick is in having made the decision to go with Twitter. I was talking about his human relationships to other people and what stock they got. That just seems wrong to me. It's just my opinion. I agree they're going to be very big. It's whether it's rocky getting big or whether it's smooth sailing getting big. That's really the only issue.
Well, I mean, the other thing they're hitting that sort of flatter part of the curve as the potential users saturate a bit, which was the same issue Facebook had. Is they got to the point where they were enough of a fraction of the internet users in the world that their growth was their continued exponential growth gets cut off, and Twitter may be getting towards that point. I know they don't have as many users as Facebook, but their user growth may be saturating in a similar way, in that the pool of people who are available to be users of Twitter may not be that much bigger than the number they've got, and so any of these exponential curves eventually become S-shaped as you hit saturation. So that may be another reason for them to be taking this point to go there, and then then they've got to refactor from, okay, we've stopped being a growth company, we're starting to be a making revenue from the users we have company.
Right. Well, I think it's both. I think that they are in the process now of establishing a solid platform with which, I mean, think about where they were 3 years ago or even 2 years ago in terms of their stability, their ability to push out services. I mean, I think that they've made significant mistakes in terms of alienating their user base. But on the other hand, the kinds of products that they are now delivering on a daily basis, intermittent though they may be, are, fascinating, really what I would like, in terms of the way that they're using at mentions, the way that they're using. I'm less enamored of their, they don't have likes, they have favorites. And favorites, I think, is the only person I know who uses them is Scoble.
Well, there's different patterns of favorite usage. The other thing that they've done recently, which is quite subtle, is the ramping up the embedding tweets and other sites stuff. They've done a lot of back-end refactoring on that. I've chatted to some of the people involved in that, so that can be extremely efficient. But it's also another huge signal, and they revealed a bit of that recently, where they will show the articles that a tweet has been embedded in on a newsworthy tweet. And they've also made it very recently, I think they just launched it this week, made it much better when you embed a large number of tweets in one story and have that perform well and so on. So there's a chunk of stuff there where they're trying to make themselves better integrated in the fabric of the web as part of this, as you say, being part of breaking news and news propagation and real-time information, and making that piece of improving that feedback loop quite a lot. I think that's significant for them. The other piece that they've got is the encouraging people to tweet while something is happening. Integrates very well with certain kinds of live media, with certain sports and news, obviously, but also event drama and things like that, and they movie releases, and they're doing well at integrating those pieces. That's the bit where I've seen them. Making some very coherent moves.
They also turned DM, direct messaging, into a chat, with left and right, depending on who the two people are. They can't do groups yet, but they can do one-on-one DMs that visually look like chat.
Yeah, that's got a bit more coherent.
Robert, you were going to say?
No, I just, my ex-boss moved to Twitter, or is moving to Twitter in a week to get some stock right before this IPO. But he's very positive about where Twitter's going, and I think it's because of this integration with all the media. That's why Twitter's going to be an important company, no matter what anybody on this show says, because every show I watch has the hashtag.
Well, what do you mean, whatever anybody says? I'm saying that they're going to be an important company. So am I wrong?
I think
hashtags aren't. The thing is, hashtags aren't completely owned by Twitter. Hashtags are actually a generic thing. But it
really is. It really, in my mind, it's associated with Twitter, and it's strongest on Twitter.
But
Facebook has the hashtags now, and Google Plus has hashtags, and LinkedIn, I think, even has.
It's gone beyond Christmas.
I'm thinking more of Instagram having hashtags, of Tumblr having hashtags. Those are places that the people use them too. But yeah, the point is that the idea of the hashtag has moved from Twitter into a sort of cultural idea.
It's a horizontal tagging system now. But Twitter, the popular imagination still associates it heavily with Twitter.
Bear Hug Camp was the original, coining of this idea of, as Dave Weiner suggested, or it was me, one or the other, that. The way that you develop open standards, and this is dear to your heart, Kevin, is to bear hug the ones that are important. And Twitter is the canonical stream, and even Facebook has bowed to it on some level in terms of using the full name as the hashtag, basically. I mean,
well, you can put real hashtags into Facebook, and also Facebook is just turning on a new graph search, which lets you search the content of your stream. So Twitter's had that for years. Facebook now has a way to publish publicly and let people follow you. That's different than 2 years ago. So Facebook has been making moves to sort of adopt a lot of the things that Twitter has had for a long time. Twitter, though, Twitter's advantage is it's a ticker on my screen, and it continues to move. I mean, you can just watch it, and it just keeps moving all day long. My Facebook feed does not do that, and that's what really, in my mind, separates Facebook and Twitter, is that I just use this as a serendipitous news feed all day long to see what's going on and what people are thinking.
And I also think you guys sort of went there a few minutes ago. What Twitter is anticipating, and I think will dominate in, is the move that Apple makes toward television. And that's over the next 3 months. We're going to see some significant activity in that area. And the notion of a second screen, I think, is going to disappear as people realize that there's no second screen. There's just your mobile device and how it's a controller for your single screen. And I think Twitter, becomes the TV guide, the controller.
Well, it's not there's a first and second screen. There's a selection of screens that you're using at any given time.
Yeah, but there's always, it's no matter how rich you are, you only have a certain amount of TV that you can buy. There's only one screen.
The other thing is, as
there's a main screen, which is the little one. And then there's other screens that you use temporarily to look at things a bit bigger.
Right, and the context switches, and when it does, then the screen that you're on is the one that you're looking at.
Right,
it's only one screen.
You can only look at one screen at a time.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. There is no such thing as multitasking, and certainly not with video.
I'm not convinced I'm not convinced that will always be true. I've always believed that, Steve. Going back to when I did EasyNet in 1994 and AOL was talking about the interactive living room, I never believed in that, but I do think you're beginning to see uses of tablet with the big screen that make it possible, not necessarily to multitask, to single task with multiple inputs.
Yeah, and there is the ability to heckle something that's happening, which is the piece that Twitter is good at.
The other thing,
and to enjoy other people's heckles.
The really hot thing next year is going to be wearables, and I just played with the Samsung Watch for the first time this week. And Twitter fits into the watch form factor and the glass form factor better than anything else because of its limitation of 160 characters. And I think we're going to see Twitter really take advantage of not just the two screen, but the multi-screen or the full personal cloud that we're starting to build. Did you guys know, by the way, Google Now, if you get close to a TV set that has DLNA or maybe a Chromecast put onto it, it shows you that you're standing next to a TV that's controllable, and it asks you, would you like to take control of that TV? And this happened to me the other night in Seattle, and I was like, whoa, we're going to be walking around.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's cool. And so soon we're going to be able to say, hey, take control of that screen and put my tweets up there. New kind of security problem for tweet casting. Yeah, I mean, I have an Apple TV on both of my TVs and a Chromecast on my TV downstairs. And Chromecast, by the way, just got Hulu. So these things are just iterating really quickly, and the wearables coming out next year are quite amazing. I just saw a pair of shoes with 100 sensors in them. I know of a startup building a shirt with 14 sensors that'll tell you all sorts of stuff. Last week at Cal Canis's conference, I saw a baseball bat sensor that you put on your baseball bat to see your swings. But the watches, everybody's waiting for Apple's iWatch, and I assume that's coming out right around the same time as Google Glass, because I think Apple's been holding off to make sure that they have something to take away all the PR oxygen from glass. And I've already talked to 2 people who've seen the iWatch, and they said it's stunningly beautiful, much more beautiful than the Pebble or the Samsung. So the entire industry is just...
That's not saying much.
It's not saying much, but everybody's waiting to see what Apple does in wearables, and I think Steve's waiting to see what they do with this TV thing.
I'm not
are they
waiting.
going to do a cable box?
I'm not waiting to see what happens. I mean, it already works.
Yeah,
I'm just waiting
but maybe they have a cable box and
display
really
for the Mini.
Yeah.
So because, I mean, I think another interesting story is how Apple has performed through this, alleged dream wash that's been going on. Where everybody thinks that the dream is over, and I don't believe in Jobs.
You mean at Apple? Yeah, I
think they've survived quite well.
They acquired Q yesterday, which I thought tells you that somebody's still got the lights on in their brain there. Did you know that? They acquired Q, C-U-E, the app that Robert was going on about months ago, which is basically it's their equivalent of Google Now meets the notification center. It's to fill out their today and tomorrow tab in the notification center, and Q does a great job of integrating all of the context into a single feed that you care about.
Okay.
It's clear that Apple and Google are going to go at it on context. The new iPhone has this sensor. Nobody's using it yet. I'm sure that won't last much more than a few weeks. Inside the privacy settings in iOS 7, you can see all the locations that you've hung out at, and that's clearly a beginning of a new contextual piece of Apple. Google is clearly trying to build an automatic world. This new Google Now that even senses objects near you, like TVs, is making Google an automatic servant, and trying to do just what Evan Williams says: remove clicks from your life, and we'll judge these ecosystems by which one has the fewer clicks. Which one lets me make a reservation at a restaurant with fewer clicks? Which one gets ahead of my life and tells me stuff, or even makes reservations automatically, without clicking. Because I hate clicking on my mobile screen. I hate clicking on a thing like this Google Glass or an iWatch. I don't want to sit there and try to tap on a little UI. I want it just to do something automatic and thrill me. Right?
Yeah, it's notifications is what's coming.
Oh, that's a big piece. Notifications is a big piece.
But I mean, that's what's going to happen. Notifications on the television and on the wearable device is the unification of all these systems.
I think there's another interesting thing, Steve, to do with Google and Apple. I think they're both focused on context, but I think Apple, as shown with the thumbprint thing, the fingerprint thing on the phone, Apple is trying to build context into the device and the world around it. It's kind of iBeacon meets sensors on the device, and using the data on the device, like your calendar or your email or other stuff. Whereas Google's DNA is all about cloud-centered knowledge of a person, which gives the ability to target that person for ads that are appropriate to the person. And Apple doesn't have to do that because it doesn't make money from advertising. It makes money from selling hardware. So there's an interesting kind of philosophical difference between the two. I'd call one is edge-centric and user-centric, which is Apple.
You think that Apple only makes money from hardware?
It makes most of its money from hardware. I mean, it makes some money elsewhere, but iTunes, for example, was always not important as a revenue center. It was more important to sell iPads and iPods.
It's $1 billion. I mean, you know, you get
but they don't care
you
about.
add up a bunch of $1 billion and you get some real money.
You're right, but relatively speaking, you must admit the heart and soul of Apple, from a revenue point of view, is shipping product.
The heart and soul of Apple, for me, is the continuity that's provided by their services, not the hardware. The hardware is disposable. You just go out and get a new one. When the battery dies, you have to get a new one. I mean, that's what it is.
You're right. From a user point of view, you're right. That's why you buy the hardware, partly. There's other reasons. But if you are the CFO of Apple and you're looking at where the money's coming from, it's the
success
of the software.
There's a reason why the money keeps coming in for them. I mean,
I totally agree.
If it wasn't for the software layer, Apple would be dead in the water. I mean, John Toshek, would you please weigh in on this?
I'd love to dive in after John does.
Yeah.
Oh, you want?
I want you to.
Would Apple be dead in the water without software? Yeah, they've proven that. So that already happened.
Yep.
Sure. It's the two together. I'd say I would saying the DNA of Google is about advertising is correct also, but I think that they've been the most they've been taking the most risky or leading edge concepts in order to propel new visions in different territories, and whether it's the car or whatever, it's just different things that they're trying out. I'd say that's more risky. I'd say Apple is much more focused, as Keith said, on the user, the consumer, as far as developing it. They're looking from the consumer out, which is taking what would a person do if they're, say this is somebody who's interested in music. What would they do with a tablet or a phone if they were in music? And they would go after that ecosystem, and the ecosystem also follows them, so that the iPad works with keyboards, or the iPhone works with the iHome clock radio in every hotel room. Much more along that end-to-end life cycle.
In no hotel room do they have the new connect, the Thunder Fire or whatever it is connector.
Yeah, and I talked about that in the Gillmor gang. He said it's going to screw over all those hotels. It's that they have to buy another $100 clock radio in every room. Yeah.
Well, and put
and they'll put the
radio
Bluetooth one instead. Yeah. And then it will work with everyone.
And that's where I was going with. Yesterday, I spoke to Zillow, which is now 800 employees, and it's a public company, and spent some time with
what do they do?
Real estate information and mobile apps. So if you're buying a house, you're probably going to use Zillow to look up the values of the
Zillow is the most popular app like that. I mean, there's nothing else that's even close.
Yeah. Redfin is good.
Yeah, but Redfin's got Redfin was just an MLS scraper.
Yeah, there's Redfin. There's a few others, but Zillow's a significant company and growing fast. 800 employees and doing really, really well.
And Trulia is pretty decent.
Yeah, and so last time I met with Zillow was about 2 years ago, and back then iPhone was much more important to it than Android was. Today, Android. He said their customers are 3 times more Android than iPhone. And he said the growth line on Android is exponentially going up, and the iPhone line is flat. It's still going up, but it's going up at a steady, non-exponential rate.
That's the leverage of maps inside the ecosystem. Because it's all about location maps. I'm
hearing this from other entrepreneurs too. Keith, I'd love to hear your numbers and see if it follows that. But I sat last night on the way home. I sat next to a senior vice president of Expedia. And by the way, this is why I turn and talk to people next to me on the plane, because you never know who you're going to sit next to. And he said the exact same thing. He said our numbers are exponential on Android and are about 3 times more today than iPhone, but he said one important thing: monetization is still on iPhone. And I said, I just walked through first class, and every single person except for one had an iPhone. And so the money has iPhones. And so that makes sense that you can sell more hotels or more plane tickets on an iPhone app, even though there's
Plus
more
U.S. money
users.
too. I mean, that's a
Yeah, that's
different.
true.
I
I'm
mean,
talking about U.S. U.S. is the market I care about mostly.
yeah, like all
Yes,
should.
the rest of the world does matter, but U.S. is the biggest and most richest market out there. Certainly for travel right now, China is coming on strong, but we can't have access to the Chinese market. So, I care about the American market. That's where I live. Anyways, those are the numbers, and so. When we say Apple's in trouble, it's not that they're in trouble. They're going to make so much money. Same thing when I talk about Microsoft. Microsoft has I don't know, $16 billion businesses. They're not going away. It's just they're in trouble from a mindset point of view.
Yeah, I know that's what you think. I agree. I do not agree with you.
Okay.
Just like I don't agree with Keith that Twitter's in trouble because they're going to an IPO too soon. I think that if anything, it's too late. That they should have jumped about the same time as Facebook did and just ridden out the downturn.
But basically, Facebook stopped them from doing that by doing such a bad job with their IPO. So that meant nobody else could do it for a while.
Yeah, but I mean now, in retrospect, it turns out that there is actual real money there, and it would have turned out that way for Twitter
which is
as well.
why Twitter can do it now.
Yeah. Well,
But
I think they were protected.
Is the major proxy for them.
They were protected
Also,
by this
I-
private market. Twitter's been protected for quite a long time in terms of being able to raise enough money to do much of what they could have done with an IPO. So that's shielded them from some of their difficulties. Go ahead, Keith.
I was just going to say that, I think I made a more subtle point than Twitter's going to be in trouble. I don't think Twitter's in trouble in the long term. I just think that there's some very obvious, management challenges of going public when you don't know your revenue numbers ahead of time.
Yeah, but I think that the same thing was said about Facebook for a year basically, which was they didn't do it right. They did a terrible job of this. I don't think they did a terrible job at all. I think they created a lot of wealth, and now the market is catching up to what their stranglehold is. In one of the three or four pillars of this emerging market. I mean, it's Facebook, Apple. Who else?
Probably
Google.
Twitter and Google.
Yeah, exactly. Not Microsoft. I mean, that in itself is an enormous change.
No, it's huge. It's fantastic. I mean, any one of us would be thrilled to be in any of those four contexts, having built them from nothing. You would be thrilled. So that's why everything I say is relative, not absolute. I'm not trying to.
No, I'm just trying to pigeonhole you, for entertainment value.
It's your inner journalist coming out. It's the headline.
What journalist? You're mistaking me for my brother.
Inner journalist.
All right. So what else? Do we have anything else?
No, and I need to go soon. So
okay. Well then.
Well, we had the Silk Road being shut down. That was interesting.
All right. Well, Keith, why don't you give us a little summary, and then we'll continue and soldier on with the other guys.
My summary is: I'm sorry I talk so much. It's mornings and coffee, and I'll try to speak less next time.
Well, if not for you, then I would have had to talk. So I'm very grateful.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. See you again next
Thank
time.
you.
Bye.
All right. So what are we talking about, Kevin?
So the Silk Road being shut down was the other fascinating story this week. So Silk Road is, or was rather, a black market for drugs and other illegal things that was run using Bitcoin and Tor and was allegedly $1.2 billion worth of transactions happened on it. Now, the $1.2 billion is slightly fishy because all the transactions were in Bitcoins, so that's retrospectively valuing some of the older Bitcoin transactions in the present value of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is inflated quite a lot. But the fact that this this marketplace existed for so long, and it took them this long to unravel it, is a fascinating piece of it. The other is that the way that they caught him was not through subverting the protocols, but through carefully tracking people discussing these kinds of things in public and seeing his social network postings about, anyone know how to do this? And so in some ways, trying to do deeply illegal things using sort of open source tools is harder than it looks.
So in other words, this is natural language processor discovery?
It's human police work discovery. They basically got a lot of agents to look through forum postings and try and see who was talking about the kinds of things early on, and use that to track down the guy who'd built it, and then discovered IP addresses and things and traced him back that way. And I think the other challenge is that even though he had all this alleged wealth in bitcoins, he didn't really have a useful way of converting that back into cash. He was not. In some ways, it's like the Breaking Bad thing, where you may have a gigantic pile of cash, but even then you can't spend it without people getting suspicious. And he was in that same position of, he'd made all this money from the transactions on the illegal market, but couldn't launder it and convert it back into a way that he could use.
Yeah, he's 29 years old, and getting caught in that little Glen Park, San Francisco library in the stacks was, it sounds like a made-for-TV show, because that library is the one we go to quite often in this little this little neighborhood of San Francisco.
Well, that's very suspicious, John.
I know. Yeah. I was trying to put that out there for the NSA. I don't know. I think that the Tor onion servers are a big story there too. As they try to hide the identity.
Well, Tor doesn't hide your identity. What it does is hide your IP address.
Well, that's kind of hides your identity. He developed that thing to hide the identity of the Bitcoin transaction.
Yes, but again, Bitcoin doesn't. Bitcoin doesn't hide your identity. It actually tracks all the transactions you make.
But he developed something that would hide the the table, right? The lookup.
He had some techniques to make it harder to track, but you could still, because you can follow every transaction.
He could, but nobody else could apparently, except he slipped up at one time.
No, because you can follow every Bitcoin transaction. So you can actually do traffic analysis on the Bitcoin payments and work out who is a large entity.
But he developed something that hid that. That's why he was able to operate for 2 years. I think there's the murder thing that was the thing that caught him, because he wouldn't have gotten caught if he had not paid an undercover police officer, to kill somebody. I think that's the story I read. I'm not an investigative reporter here. That's what I've been reading in the Chronicle.
Oh, I was reading the Ars Technica one, which went into more detail. But it's definitely a fascinating story. But it's also a marker for the broader story about surveillance and interception and working out what's going on there, and whether it is the question of, can you actually be anonymous on the internet is a big part of this too.
And the answer appears to be no.
Well, you can be, but as soon as you try and connect it to real world things, then the real world things will pin you down.
Yeah, that doesn't ever happen. But you're right. Yeah,
getting caught. I'm not sure I understand what you just said.
So you can be anonymous on the internet, and no one will know who you are and what you're writing about. But as soon as you try and connect it to money or physical transactions or meeting people or mailing drugs, then you've actually made a connection. And then you've got the ability for somebody to connect you and then unravel the pieces and get back to the whole thing. So now they have the entire servers that the thing was built on, so they can go through and make the connections and potentially make arrests for the people who were involved in the Silk Road.
Yeah, it's probably a gold mine for. If there was anybody still not furloughed that can investigate this, it'd probably be a gold mine of information.
Not furloughed. That sounds like a T-shirt. Okay, Scoble. Anything else?
No, I went to Seattle. Well, we could talk about Microsoft a little bit.
Sure, why not?
It's in disarray. We knew that already.
Yeah. I find it fascinating that Steve Sinofsky is hanging out with Aaron Levy.
Well, that shows that Steven is pretty smart because Aaron's a pretty smart entrepreneur.
No, I just find it interesting that attempts are being made to develop a alternative to what Microsoft is having a hard time keeping together as they, disappear under the mobile onslaught.
Yeah, it's gonna, this is going to be a really tough time for Microsoft because even inside Microsoft, people are admitting they need to be split up. There's too many businesses to manage for one person. $18 billion businesses. Even if you're Superman, you can't have enough meetings in a week to focus on any one of those things. And so they need to either split it up mentally and have two like CEOs, one for consumer, one for enterprise, or something like that. Or they really need to physically split up the company, and that's really difficult because like the Xbox team is using code from the Windows team, and there's lots of patents going back and forth, and how do you license that across two companies? It's a mess. I don't know what I would do. I'm not, and neither does anybody else who even at a pretty high level inside the company. It's they're like, what is going to happen to us now? I don't know, and people are looking to get out. There's going to be already there's a brain drain. You saw Sandquist leave to go to Twitter. He's hardly the only one looking for a job right now, and that's causing its own momentum, as well as people just say this is not going to be a fun place for a year or until the new CEO gets put in place and stuff like that.
John Toshak, what do you think of these three people asking Gates to resign as chairman?
Oh, I think it's a show. It's a pomp with no circumstance. Microsoft doesn't tune into that kind of pressure generally. I think it's just that they're raising a lot of awareness that Gates shouldn't hire someone just like him, from the same same age, same generation, and should probably look at somebody who can either take the company in a new direction or manage the company as if it's a utility again, not somewhere in between. It's forcing a commitment.
So you don't think it's important?
In the scheme of things, it's important because...
Well, I mean, the reason I compare it to the kinds of things that we heard just before the Arab Springs, where it just seemed ridiculous, and the next thing you see the guy on a cot on trial. These things have a habit of escalating rather rapidly.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't.
What do you think, Kevin?
I think they have got an existential crisis. That's the problem. They've got this business that's predicated on attacks on all computers that has been massively eroded, and they're still working out what to do. And that's not going to be a straightforward process for them. Whoever they appoint has that same problem, and they still have they still have large revenue flows as those businesses fade out, but they. Making the leap to something new is hard.
It's not really the businesses are fading. Windows still owns 90% market share on desktops and laptops. It's that the new world is mobile, and they have 4% market share there. It's not that the old business is eroding. It's that all of a sudden they don't own.
But it is because
they don't own the world anymore.
That business is being displaced. The absolute sales of desktops and laptops have gone down a lot. And the chunks of time people spend in them, they're mostly spending in the browser. And the relevance, the need to use Microsoft Office for everything is also
I'm not familiar with this browser you speak of. What is a browser?
A browser is what you use as an operating system these days.
Oh, you mean the thing that underlies the apps that I use constantly?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we've covered it all. Let's start with John Toshek and go around the table.
I think we've covered it all. The Twitter IPO, I think it is the news feed of a mobile device. I think it offers a lot of potential and engagement. I don't think it's there yet, but I do think it's the right time to go public. And they have to stabilize a little bit on the financial part, but and make it more predictable. But I think they'll work through that. I mean, they're going to go through this. They're going to do all the things necessary in order to go public, which is a very expensive and time-consuming proposition.
Robert Scoble.
Where do I go? These low-energy Bluetooth radios has a lot of people rethinking what's coming. Expedia owns a lot of the world's travelers and is going up in usage, and they're now thinking about, what could you do when you walk into a hotel with a new iPhone with new iOS 7 that has a low-energy Bluetooth radio sensor in it? Could we play a new kind of loyalty game by putting these radios in? Could we serve our customers in a new way? And Zillow's thinking about the same thing. It's a really interesting world coming. I went to Glimpse as well, which is doing a mobile information for your family and friends. And they're playing with wearables and think they're already on the Samsung Watch, and they're watching this wearables world very, very closely because they know these small screens are going to control how we interact with the world. And we're not going to have a 2-screen world. We're going to have a 5-screen world soon, and it's
real soon. I mean, once Thanksgiving starts, it's the holiday season. They got to get these products in the supply chain.
Well, Apple and Google are not going to come out this year with their 2 main products. I think this is a 2014 thing. I assume they're going to come out in February or get announced in February around the Mobile World Congress conference, which happens in Barcelona. That's usually when all the world's Android ecosystem gets together, and a few other ecosystems. But I would assume that Apple and Google are going to make announcements somewhere in that time frame. February, March, maybe January, maybe at the Consumer Electronics Show in January. But these are not coming out this year.
Well, OS 10, pardon the Freudian slip, is coming out at the end of this month, supposedly.
Yeah,
or within
they
10
just
days.
went into final golden master yesterday for the developers. So,
and
I'm assuming that means there's a new generation of Mac laptops as well.
Yeah, and I think
it's about time.
We'll see what the backlog is on the Mac Mini Retina display. I think that'll be huge if they can get it out before Christmas.
They said they're having trouble making the screens, so God knows if they're going to be able to make this Christmas. But yeah, and that would be a nice pump for Apple.
And it might be 64-bit, given.
Yeah, I really don't care about that.
I care about it because Cisco's client doesn't work on it. But
well, there you go.
If we can get more devices into the marketplace that require them to get their what together, then that'll be a good thing. Kevin Marks, last thoughts.
I think the sort of tablet revolution thing continues. Ian in the chat was just pointing out that Tesco's in the UK, which is a grocery store like. I'm not sure who the analogy would be. It's a slightly upscale grocery store. Has shipped their own tablet.
The UK is a slightly upscale grocery store.
No, the Tesco.
Oh,
I'm trying to map Tesco to the US. It's
how far the empire has fallen.
It's a nicer shop than Safeway is. Let's say. I don't know exactly which US equivalent would be. And they've launched their own Android tablet for just under $200 equivalent, which is basically it looks like last year's Nexus 7, but very competent running out of the box Android, and that it's just fascinating to see that a grocery store can get into this market and have working apps straight away.
But look at the numbers: 35,000 sold the first day. Apple in the first weekend sold at minimum 5.5 million iPhones, and just iPhone 5s's, and probably 9 million. And this is the numbers are just not there yet for tablets. I'm not
expecting Tesco to take over from Apple. Just the point is that they've this is a way of saying this is a complete commodity market. You can make something and sell it and produce it, and how do they interoperate?
I'm seeing some $50 tablets in classrooms, and they're really they're not that crappy actually. But
Best Buy's selling the 5C for $50 with a contract.
Yeah,
but that's contract
like,
that means $500, because they're getting $450 subsidies. I hate this subsidy crap, 'cause I can't go and buy it for $50,
Well, you get, they're going to go to loans. They're going to go to, you basically
that's basically what T-Mobile
divided by 12, and that's what you pay, and then you get a new battery.
Well, you divide it by 24.
This other
is
stuff
what T-Mobile does
around it. It's about, this is the battery market. It's not anything else.
Yeah.
All right, I got to run here. So I want to thank Rackspace, and particularly Rob Legess, without which the show would not be here. I want to thank Newtek and their TriCaster. I want to thank our producer-director, Tina Chase Gillmor. Where's the hand? Thank you. And I want to thank John Toshak. Thanks, John.
Great to be here, Steve.
As always. I want to thank Robert Scoble. Amazing.
Yay. Thank you.
And Kevin Marks. Thank you.
Thank you.
A belated thanks to Keith Tier, and we'll, as always, appreciate the chat room, which continues to be amazing and verbose. We try and watch it. We don't necessarily react. I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.